Welcome to Real Life Stories, where you can get inspired to become a better leader and unlock new opportunities, listening to how others like you did it before. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest speaker, Juan Elias, Director of the Go-to-Market function at Paychex, who will share his leadership story with all of you. Juan Ignacio has more than 25 years of experience in sales and commercial operations positions. He's originally from Argentina. Yes, we're compatriots, but now he lives in the US, in Texas in particular. So Juan, so happy to have you here. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jesus. Thank you. I'm doing fine. I'm honored to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
We're going to start with you talking a little bit about your story. I mean, this is real life stories. So first of all, we'd like to know a bit about yourself, your story, since when you started, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Happy to share that. So as you mentioned, I'm originally from Argentina, where I went through my university studies. I'm an industrial engineer and also an MBA. Both of those degrees I obtained in Argentinian universities. And I started my career at the Argentinian branch of former company, basically in the space of marketing of customer service, which is the parts and service division that helps obviously sell repairs through the dealer network. And I started with different positions, from being a sole trainee to probably becoming the youngest manager, or at the leadership level employee of that Argentinian branch, probably 5 years into being there. And I worked there for almost 7 years. That was at the time what I saw to be my dream job, right? So really, I was doing something that I really enjoyed in an industry that I loved. And I really woke up every day looking forward to going to work, and the pace of my career was going as planned. Obviously, that was happening in Argentina. And for those who are not familiar with Argentina, the history of turbulent economic conditions can be traced back to a century in the past. And particularly the auto manufacturing industry usually is one of the ones that suffers the most when economic actually goes down. And I was suddenly finding myself literally with no job. I mean, there was a massive restructuration of the business, and my role was affected at the time. But that may be part for another story. Speaking about my leadership journey, that was my very first role of leadership, where I was managing a team that was basically trying to convince the dealer owners, which are independent entrepreneurs, to invest on initiatives that would allow them to better serve their customers and make more money in their service business. I was also managing the relationships with external consulting firms that would allow and bring some of those programs to be implemented in those dealers, as I mentioned. Now, long story short, after that initial role and going through that job transition, I joined another Argentinian company that was focused on the manufacturing of tires, and that role was really a sales role. I mean, I had to go back all the way to the bottom of the ladder and start again. But that again introduced me to probably the learning opportunities of how not to be a good leader, in the sense that the culture of that organization in particular, which was family owned, and the owner of that company was literally walking in the aisles, and there was a lot of top-down mandates in terms of how things whether to be done, and there was a very complacent type of culture where if the owner of the company, just to be extreme, said that things would fall upwards, everyone would say yes, things are falling upwards. Again, something I would like to remark out of that initial experience of finding myself suddenly without a job before going into this last job I mentioned, uh, helped me identify, capabilities and strengths that I not necessarily was accounting for or aware of. I mean, the way I took that initial experience was fairly positive in the sense that I immediately focused on trying to move forward and not necessarily trying to, you know, find or lament why I was going through that, painful experience,
Yeah, experience.
which was insightful for me, right? And I discovered or confirmed that probably resiliency was one of my biggest strengths, and also being able to uh, objectively understand what is it that I can control to move forward in any direction that I define.
Right.
The other thing that I also learned, and this is more throughout my journey, relates to uh, everything and every opportunity you face, good or bad, should allow you to learn something from, and should eventually get you to be better than you were before, and hopefully growing, either personally, professionally, or however you want to capitalize that. That is something that I kept with me along these years, where in the spirit of looking to become a bit better every day, I try to really make something out of either those good experience or even failures.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think every experience, good or bad, molds a little bit to where you are today. So Juan, and I know you're probably at that part where you became a salesperson and you wanted to go back to leadership. So did you find any challenges there? I mean, what was your way, towards leadership again? How could you leap again?
Yeah, so the first challenge that I found was basically realizing that that current company that I was in was not necessarily the one I wanted to continue to grow on. So my focus at the time was really looking to find that next role that I would be happier with. Uh, and I think that's also it can also be framed under leadership, in this case, personal leadership. Something probably that we need to acknowledge, or that I still think, is that you don't need to be having people reporting to you to be a leader, right? That being a leader starts with really
100%.
understanding where you want to go, having that clarity of your mission, and eventually, if you need to, being able to translate that to others so that they can really follow you and want to work with you. Again, leadership doesn't come from the hierarchy and the formal authority of a role, but really from your ability to really mobilize others and and,
Exactly.
and give
Yeah.
them something in return, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, and from there to where you are today, you're a director in Paychex. You manage, a large part of the operations, of the GTM side, and I believe several people that work in your team. So, what other challenges you found to get to where you are today? I mean, I believe you had to learn a lot of things from being a salesperson or having that leadership opportunity when you were very young to where you are today. I mean, for the listeners who are struggling to, step up their game a little bit, and get those roles, what, what stories can you find there? What things in your story you can highlight for them?
Yeah, probably before going or diving into answering that question, I may want to feel part of the void between that job that I mentioned and where I am now.
Yeah.
Uh, Ultimately, I found that next job after that one that I didn't like very much. That translated into me joining a very large multinational oil and gas company in Argentina, uh, where probably I learned the most about my leadership traits and my transition from, different individual contributing roles to being a leader.
Right.
And eventually that very same company was the one that brought me to Houston, Texas, where I'm based today since 13 years ago. Now, again, building on that comment of ever being learning and potentially whatever you are today is a result of everything you've done in the past. That job that I didn't like that much exposed me to, at the time, the commercial transport industry in Argentina, where we were selling tires to truck companies, as an example. And that allowed me to have the acumen required to take a role in the lubricants business in this oil and gas company that was catering to the same industry. And I was able to start growing from there.
Right.
My first leadership role in that company was actually that of being a sales manager, where I was leading a team of about 9 people with a mix of salespeople or account managers that were servicing different types of accounts and in different segments of the market, and a small operations team that was supporting those teams in terms of reporting and data and other channel activities that we used to have. And that experience probably is a good segue to for one of the questions that you may have in terms of, managing challenging situations, or even, finding or inheriting a team that is not necessarily performing as it should.
Yeah.
So the context of this transition to leading this team was that the previous sales manager, had exited and left the company. That was a team that was, by any measurement, not necessarily delivering what they should in terms of the business they should be achieving. And I have a mixed bag of experience and non-experienced account managers that I had to deal with. And the long story short is that after probably about 18 months, that team was actually, overachieving mostly in every case.
Wow.
So the success story from a leadership perspective, at least on my end, translates into how can you deal and engage at the individual level with each of those people, understand what is it that drives them, what motivates them, what is it that what challenges they're facing, and play a role in whatever you can to remove whatever barriers they have, and be a support for them to tackle potentially some of the challenges that they're facing. But also, there's a basic leadership matter which goes into how are you setting clear goals for them to go after? How are you setting clear requirements in terms of how is it that potentially they need to do that, or what are the restrictions in terms of time or budget or many other resources that they need to be also considering? And more importantly, how you are empowering them to do what you're asking to do. And the latter probably is something that is usually overlooked, right? Sometimes we're good at setting expectations and even goals, but we're not necessarily giving either the resources in terms of time, material, tools, or even the authority for them to make the decisions that they need to effectively play the roles that you want them to play.
Yeah.
So that was a biggest learning. I tend to be empathetic by nature, so and I tend to care about people and engage with people on a personal basis. So my probably instinctive approach to start in that new role was really starting to get to know every one of those individuals and seeing them as individuals. Many of them were even peers from my former role, or people I had relationships with that work in the same office, and then we probably hang around together at some point. But now that you assume that new role as their leader, things can change. I mean, from either side, their perception or yours. But I think you need to take that conscious effort to meet them where they are, and that means really first knowing them. So what is it that they do beyond work? Well, their family, what is it? What is their why around
Yeah,
what
what makes them tick, right?
exactly? Yeah.
What are they interested in, right? And align that to what you expect from them. Yeah, that's great. And really, motivation and difficult conversations, those are two topics that a lot of our listeners are dealing with right now. Sometimes you get into a team and you have to lead a team that comes from previous experiences. They're not very productive, and you need to lift them up. So it's a great story what you're telling us now. But I believe during those 18 months that you described, there was probably some bumps in the road that you had to overcome. What lessons learned can you briefly share with us? Some things where you had to correct course, I don't know, or you had, or some things that worked, for you to be able to lift that team up in only 18 months.
Yeah, that's a good question. And definitely there were experiences where, things were not running smoothly. But I would say that the way of effectively first setting up the context for those events to be minimized goes back to what I said earlier in terms of your ability to set clear goals and expectations and requirements and allow that empowerment that I mentioned. That allows you to do another thing that I didn't mention, which is part of the essential leader role, which is holding people accountable for what you are agreeing for them to do and own. So if you do that effectively, that difficult conversation that you're mentioning should not be as difficult, right? Because now if you have been showing people what they should be working towards and eventually even tracking their progress towards that, whatever that is. It could be a sales quota, but it could be a task or a deliverable or a project that they might be working today. And you take the time to inspect what they're doing, meaning, are they doing what they should be doing? Are they managing the right priorities based on those expectations and goals that you set? You have those times to early warn potentially what could translate into a difficult conversation, and most importantly, even avoid it. So what I'm trying to say basically is if you do everything that I just said in terms of being clear and constantly reviewing those potential barriers that might be affecting that delivery that you agreed, that very agreement would allow you later to confront that individual to say, you're not doing or not delivering what we agreed. And that is something that they need to acknowledge, which provides part of that transparency that should make that difficult conversation less so, right? As opposed to finding yourself that the situation may have come to a point that it requires some action, but yet come as a surprise to that person, which you haven't been holding accountable in time. So
Yeah.
I think the bottom line is we are the ones that actually shape whether that outcome is or not. And if we find ourselves in what we see to be a difficult conversation, it's more about on us than on the other person.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
exactly. Yeah, I think it does. And, it's something that I think both of us and a lot of our listeners have experienced in both sides, right? So, when you're not held accountable, then surprises come your way at the annual performance review, or a later stage. And then when we become leaders, it's very important that we don't repeat those mistakes, that we hold people accountable, that we keep in touch with them, that we align on expectations, and yeah, that we don't wait. Don't put it off, because it's gonna be better if you just have it at this point and not make it worse later, right?
Yeah. And if you wonder, how did I get to know everything that I knew at the time? I would say that I was very lucky to first have worked for companies that would invest in their leaders and train them on many of those leadership skills. But more importantly, I was fortunate enough to work for great leaders that were shaping that experience that I learned to appreciate, that would shape my model of what I would
Yes,
want the experience for my people today.
exactly. Exactly. And this is what real life stories is all about, you know. And I think you're saying it, you know, in other words, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but basically stories and inspiration from role models, you know, takes more than just pure content, not just pure training. I mean, training is important. I'm not saying that, but that is not. But in the end, you remember more, you know, those people that shaped you, as you're saying, and you know that helped you become who you are today. So,
Yeah, I tell you, I had those other people that
of
I still
course, yeah.
remember, because not everything was roses.
What not to
But to
be,
my
right?
earlier
Yeah.
point, it was really on me to capitalize even that poor experience into a learning for myself, even if that's knowing what is that I don't want to do or be.
Exactly.
Like,
That's great. That's great. No, yeah, I think that, you know, closes the circle. So Juan, so there is a lot of people in there listening to this, and you know that probably want to get in contact with you. They want to know more about you. They want to, you know, learn more from you. So how can they get in contact with you?
I guess the easiest way is through my LinkedIn profile. I mean, you can definitely reach out to connect, and I'm always open to, even get to a virtual coffee or even a real one if we are physically close by.
Of course, we'll
And that would be a good start. I would say that part of my learnings in my journey was also around not dismissing the value of networking, right?
oh, yeah.
Because I mean, I could tell you right now, probably the last 3 or 4 roles that I have in the past 10 years were a result of actually meeting people outside my network for it
100%,
in
100%.
different ways, right? But on top of that, beyond the specific purpose of finding another job, I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn from those people that you don't know, that are different, that are not necessarily organically coming your way, if that means. So
Yeah.
that shapes in myself that openness potentially to explore those new relationships as much as I can.
Oh, that's great, Juan. Yeah, and that's something that we encourage all the time in real life stories. Network, you know, don't expect to, you know, don't wait. Let's say don't wait until you need it. You know, just network because you know the time you need it, they're gonna be there for you. So, and as you say, you know, try to have a diverse network. You know, different points of view always helps, not just the people that surround you. So, no, that this was great. I really appreciate it. So, well, Juan, thank you very much for being here with us in real life stories. Appreciate it.
No, thank for having me, and as always, it's a pleasure speaking to you, Jesus.
Same for me. Thank you so much.
No, bye. Thank you. Bye, everyone.